All right, y'all, welcome to video number 24. In this video, I want to sort of separate out a couple concepts. You have that of the Judeo-Christian, then I do believe there's a separate category for Christian, and then another category for Gnosticism. And I think there's a core concept that separates these, and that is the concept of the literal versus the spiritual. I'll go ahead and try and explain these, beginning with Judeo-Christian and Christianity. And here I believe the separating line, now a lot of folks would say, well, Jewish folks believe that the Messiah hasn't come, or maybe it's here right now, or and Christians be like, well, the Messiah has already come, that sort of thing. I'm going to say no. That's not what I think separates Judeo-Christian, which I mean, I'm putting some Christians in that category with the Jewish belief, and another category of Christians in their own category away from the Judeo-Christian belief. And that is, the separating line is the law. Judeo-Christians believe in the letter of the law. It's the reason why in Western society, every time Congress passes a bill, it has to have so many pages and so many terms and definitions and this and that's because it's very defined, very pointed, trying to close out loopholes. So the spirit of the law would say something like, you can't harm people. And then someone will commit an act and like, well, the law doesn't say I can't do that. So the literal person will have to write the law saying, all right, in this case, you can't do this, 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 this. And every time something else happens, they keep adding on to make it very literal instead of having what I would call the spirit of the law. So the Judeo-Christians are people that believe in the letter of the law. And Christianity is the spirit of the law. And I will use Jesus' own words to sort of elucidate this concept. Jesus was asked several times, what is the greatest commandment? And instead of naming one of the commandments, being the letter of the law, Jesus said that to love God and to love your neighbor. And in another case, he talked about the golden rule. All of these are spiritual concepts that you're not supposed to violate. They're not literal. They're not well defined. They're not letter of the law. And in another case, if you look at the Sermon on the Mount, there are many cases where Jesus is talking about murder and adultery and other things, where he's clearly saying that just the idea of having lust in your heart is adultery. It isn't the physical act of committing something. It is, you can commit a crime spiritually. So this is what I'm referring to. So Judeo-Christians believe in the letter of the law, contract law, this type of thing. Christians believe in the spirit of the law, meaning that we must live our lives in accordance with that which is a higher value, whether it's written down or not. And what separates the Gnostics from the Christians, I also believe, is another literal versus spiritual issue, and that is that of the crucifixion of Christ. Christians believe in the very physical, literal interpretation of the crucifixion of Christ, versus the Gnostics believe in the spiritual implications of the crucifixion. And this is a very, very key meaning. And I do believe Jesus himself leaned very much on the Gnostic interpretation. I can't remember if it was Mark, but he brought the disciples in and said, hey, when I'm out in public, I speak in parable, but in secret I will tell you the truth. This is a Gnostic way of seeing the world, that there's some sort of secret information. Whereas Jesus would say, narrow is the path, and very few will find it. Why would Jesus say something like this? If it was simply follow me or believe in me, I mean, that path would be very wide. There's what, 1.3 billion Christians or something in the world. So it'd be very simple and a very, very wide path to follow the path of Christianity. But Jesus said that it is difficult to find. Jesus says, do you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear? Because that path is narrow and you have to find it on your own. So I believe Jesus was calling to the spiritual interpretation of the crucifixion. And it's something that each one of us must find on our own. God speaks to every single person as long as we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Or, again, you can be very literal. It's the reason why I like the Jews have 613 commandments, because each aspect of life must follow the letter of the law. Or you can live your life as a spiritual interpretation of law. Or you can live your life as a spiritual interpretation of law and a spiritual interpretation of salvation. Again, the Christians would have a very literal, very written letter of the law of what is salvation. Perhaps that's probably the better way of saying it. There's the letter of the law, there's the letter of salvation, or there is the spirit of both. And it's up to each one of us to choose for ourselves. I'm going to leave it there, my friends, and I will see you on the next one.